All right, good morning, everybody. Everything new under the sun. I'm going to take a look at a number of articles again today, speaking about events that are going to happen in the last days that the Bible talks about. And often these stories, these articles, the news is repeated over and over, and that's because it's all part of the birth pains. These things start off small, and they grow in frequency and intensity until the baby is born, if you will, until the Lord returns. And one of those items that's converging in terms of Bible prophecy is what I believe to be an economic collapse. I believe it's spoken of in Ezekiel 38, and we'll take a look at that. But Ezekiel 38, it describes some of the reasons possibly why Russia is Gog and Magog, Turkey, Iran, and allied nations, why they're actually attacking Israel in the last days. And so this default, this debt ceiling is coming up. Not default, but the debt ceiling, the $22 trillion debt, and the debt ceiling is coming up shortly in September. Interesting time period for this debt ceiling to be up, and they have to vote before they go on recess, before the Congress goes on their summer vacation for 6 weeks. They need to vote on this. Otherwise, it's going to be a clear and present danger to the U.S. and the world economy in September if it doesn't get dealt with. So we have all these things converging for the fall period. As interestingly, they strangely, they often do add or go into the September period and converge on the September and the fall period with all the fall feasts happening. It's a very high prophetic watch time. So let's look at this. This is SputnikNews.com. Let's look at the news of the day. Treasury Secretary confirms U.S. risks defaulting on its $22 trillion debt in as little as 2 months if the Congress doesn't agree to borrow more money and to increase the debt ceiling. And the increase of the debt ceiling is just another way to kick the can down the road, to leave this problem for another generation or another group of politicians. So this should be worrisome to everybody, but ultimately they can't stop increasing the debt ceiling. If they've gone too far now. If they don't increase the debt ceiling, there's going to be severe economic impact, if not outright economic collapse if they don't. So they basically have to continue now. They're past the point where they can actually decide not to raise the debt ceiling. Last week, Washington-based think tank warned of potentially devastating economic consequences for the U.S. and global economies, because the U.S. is a world reserve currency, so if they go down, the world goes down, if Congress didn't pass a debt limit extension in weeks to come. So they're heading into their 6-week summer-long vacation. They're not expected to return to Washington until the second week of September. So it says here, Thursday, Pelosi urged lawmakers to act to raise a debt limit before the recess. Of course, they're not going to. It seems that what has happened in the past is they've been urged to do it, but ultimately they never come to agreement until the 11th hour, until they're absolutely forced to do something about something. And so I think this is probably going to be what's going to happen again. Democratic aide cited Bloomberg said she had already spoken to Mnuchin on the debt issue twice and will do so again over the weekend. Again, I don't think they're going to do anything about this until they're absolutely forced into a corner. And then that's the only time they're all going to agree to do something. Congress slapped limits on federal government's ability to borrow in March. The U.S. federal debt just reached $22 trillion. So I think that's $2 trillion increase in the debt since Trump became the president. According to estimates by Congressional Budget Office, the debt could reach between 144 and 219% of GDP. And of course, once countries go over 100% of GDP, that's really when they're in the downward spiral. They can't recover by that anymore, and they're not going to recover anymore. The U.S. is the world's largest debtor nation, which accounts for deficits reaching around $500 billion annually. And debt, that's just paying the interest on the debt effectively. And total debt growing steadily since the 1950s, in particular in 1980s, and after what? The 2008 financial crisis, when they decided to print money out of thin air, and they just added that to their debt. So incredible. Trump accused Obama for growing the debt. Obama grew it a huge amount. Although the debt has continued to climb by over $2 trillion so far since Trump came into office, which is what I said. So Ezekiel 38 is one of these passages that I think is coming very soon. I think it's preceded by Isaiah 17, and Isaiah 17 is preceded even more by an economic collapse. And in this, we have what looks to be a reason for the invasion, and so various countries are saying, "Why have you invaded Israel?" And it says to come to take a spoil, to take money, to take oil, to take prey, to turn thy hand upon the desolate places that are now inhabited, and upon the people that are gathered out of the nations rather, which have gotten cattle and goods. So they've invaded it not because they just hate Israel, but to take a spoil, to take riches, to take what Israel has. That suggests to me that the time period that they're in is a time in which they don't have money. They are invading other countries because they're desperate. They don't have money. They don't have livestock. And maybe they can't eat. Maybe there's no food. Maybe there's famine in the land. And so it says, art thou come to take a spoil? Hast thou gathered thy company to take a prey, to carry away silver and gold, to take away cattle and goods, to take a great spoil? Again, why are they coming? Well, everything goes back to money. So it appears that they've invaded Israel in large part, not just because they hate Israel, but because they want to take a spoil. And that's probably Russia's involvement in this. They are at a place where Israel is now threatening their economic viability, the economic viability of Russia in terms of selling oil to Europe mainly, because Israel is going to start undercutting them with the Leviathan gas field, which of course there is a platform heading to the Leviathan gas field to start pumping natural gas, to start and to get a pipeline going to Europe. So Israel's going to undercut them, and that's going to take the economic feet out from under Russia and other countries who are selling to Europe. And that's going to anger them. And so they're coming at a time when the economy is heading downwards. They're coming at a time to steal oil because they don't have any, or they're not able to make a profit on it. So I think an economic collapse kind of runs through this. All right, we spoke of a blackout in New York City. And this Douglas McKinnon guy, this is from FoxNews.com, he said a significant blackout is coming. He warned prior to this occurring that a blackout was coming. Oddly, a couple days later, a blackout actually did occur. NYC is a warning. Blackout is coming. So this is one of those times when you should remind yourself to get prepared for unknown circumstances. In the last days, there are going to be troublesome times, a tribulation. There's going to be hard times. The economy, I think, is going to collapse. There's going to be wars, rumors of wars, earthquakes in diverse places. Any one of those things could cause a blackout, could cause a grid failure. And so grid failure is one of the things in this day and age. We can't live without power in this day and age with all our electronics. So if you're not prepared for this, you are going to be in trouble. Just about 3 weeks ago, I did a piece headlined, "Will You Survive the Coming Blackout?" This is Douglas McKinnon says. On the heels of the weekend's mini blackout in New York City, this is not about "I told you so," but it's about reminding people about large and sustained blackout that could cripple much of society, and it could and would have a devastating impact on our lives and survival. Most of us don't know how to survive without electricity, let alone how to plant a garden and these sorts of things. Such a blackout is coming. It's a matter of time, because it goes on to say that the power grid is ancient. Ancient electrical power infrastructure triggers a chain reaction power loss, which spreads in seconds and leaves millions of people in the dark, and much worse. In 2003, a tree branch fell on a power line in Ohio. Instantly, over 50 million people in the United States and Canada were hit with cascading blackouts. That's because when one part of the power grid goes down, it cascades to other power grids as it tries to pull power, and they go down as well because they're not able to sustain the power requirements. And so it's very easy for the national power grid, the North American power grid, to go down. It's affected very easily by anything. A hurricane, economic crisis, an earthquake which takes out some power stations, even an EMP blast, something offensive weapon of some sort by another country. So this is a clear and present danger, and if you're not prepared, maybe you need to be with some lights, with some battery backup power, just to run, even just to charge your cell phones and other things. Cell phone towers are only on battery backup as well, so they won't last forever during a significant crisis, during a multi-day crisis. Probably cell towers are going to go down as well. So you need to be prepared for this. I'll probably do shortly a video on, I'll probably title it My Bug Out, my Mobile Bug Out Vehicle. And I've got some significant updates in my Airstream that I'd like to show you guys in terms of the off-grid capability of that camper now. I think we're getting to a good point with the camper where I don't have a ton of power, but we could certainly survive in a time of power outage and run some critical equipment if needed. And so that's something you should be concerned about. And something you should be prepared for. Just like the ants in the Bible, they don't ask anybody what they need to do. They just don't go and prepare, and they prepare for the winter, and they store up food, and they store up what they need. And likewise, we should not rely on grocery stores, government, etc. We should have some level of preparedness for any emergency, so that you can help your neighbors, and so that when your neighbors say, how did you know to get prepared? And we can share our faith and say, you know what, God gives a brain, and God gives us great examples in nature as well, and God also tells us of times that are to come. So what we take from that is that we should be prepared spiritually in our hearts and otherwise. All right, Deutsche Bank. This is a clear and present danger to the world economy. A bank run is starting. Deutsche Bank clients are pulling $1 billion a day as Deutsche Bank pulls out of world markets for world trading and such. And so people are starting to pull out money. And the comment was that this is starting to look like a Lehman Brothers. It's not there yet, but it's a bank jog. Let me see if I can find it here. Find jog. It says, let's see. Deutsche Bank hedge funds balances have been declining throughout the year as speculation swirled around Suing's intentions for the prime brokerage, but the rate of redemptions was far lower than $1 billion per day. Now that a bank jog has become a bank run, the next question is, how much liquidity reserves does Deutsche Bank really have, and what happens if hedge fund clients suddenly spooked they will be the last bag holder standing, pulling the remaining 150 billion euros all at once? And so you look at this chart. Lehman is in red, Deutsche Bank is in blue, and boy, you see a precipitous downward fall where Lehman literally flatlines in this image. Deutsche Bank is heading that way, and that Deutsche Bank is a very, very large bank. It's the one thing that could start pulling banks down in Europe, and then effectively that would pull banks down all around. So I think Deutsche Bank is going to be the bank that triggers the next depression, the next economic collapse. They're going to be one of the key players in this, and there is already a noted bank run on Deutsche Bank, pulling people getting out of there while they can. Interesting. A couple of quick articles. America helps Israel prepare 2 more F-35s touch down in Jerusalem. They now have a total of 16 F-35 aircraft. And I don't know how many they want or need or are coming in the future. But they're getting ready for a strike. I think they're building up their military so that they can do strikes into Iran. And Netanyahu's already said that standing in front of F-35s a couple of days ago, that he was commenting about the fighter jet behind him, which was an F-35, saying that it could attack Iran. It could head into Iran. And they are already getting their air-to-air refueling planes. Was it the C-150s? I forget the number of them. They're getting their air-to-air refueling tankers ready, because that's probably going to be needed for these F-35s to go into Iran and get back after a strike. And so Israel has air-to-air refueling tankers ready to go. They have 16 F-35s ready to go. All of this at the same time. This is from the sun.co.uk. Iran doubles down on threat to attack Britain over vicious oil tanker seizures as Royal Navy sends third warship to the Gulf. So Iran is significantly threatening. There's a lot going on that mainstream media isn't really covering. And Iran's really, really getting bellicose and saying a lot of things about what they're going to do in the Gulf should British and U.S. warships continue. And so they're threatening the United States. They're threatening Europe and Britain with piracy even. Iranian leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei accused Britain of piracy after Royal Marine seized a supertanker believed to be carrying Iranian crude to Syria on July 5th. So Iran is going to reach out and do something. Iran and those who believe in our system will not leave such vicious deeds unanswered, says the Ayatollah, and so they're threatening that they're going to do something and that these are not going to go unanswered. So what are they building up to? I don't know. They have lots of bellicose rhetoric, and they say a lot of things that they're going to do a lot of things. They make a lot of threats. They don't necessarily act on as many threats as they make. But this is significant, and you got to consider this something that is a potential kickoff to a war in the Middle East as well. So you're talking about wars, rumors of wars in the last days, pestilences, famines, countries invading other countries for spoil in time of need, and so you think of economic collapse. And so these are the things. These are the headlines for today that give you an indication of where we are in Bible prophecy. Thanks for watching, guys. The times are serious, and you need to make sure you know the Lord Jesus Christ as your personal Lord and Savior. Thanks for watching. We'll see you guys in the next video.